totally captivated by them. Finally, there is time set aside for us to help our friend Sammy Moon understand what retirement from work means. Now, I don't think Sammy is going to retire from work. He may be retiring from executive director of the Alliance, but hardly from work. And actually, this part of the agenda may turn out to be more of a roast of Sammy, but we'll see. Anyway, it's a time for us to sing Happy Trails. Now, Sammy is one of the few in here who is old enough to remember what that is, and Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. But we'll sing Happy Trails to Sammy as he goes on his retirement journey. Before going further, I want to recognize the Alliance's board members and officers and thank them for their belief in the vision and mission of the Alliance. So if you all would raise your hand or even stand up and take a bow in the prayer name. We'll call them individually now. Anne Marie Kendall is our chair. Ivy Allen is our secretary. Charles Lindsay, our treasurer. Portia Espy is an executive committee at-large member. Sanford Johnson is the executive committee at-large member. Jane Alexander, Rena Evers Everett, Mary Ann Placencia, Marcus Ward, Roger Wilder, and our newest members just elected today, Mike Dixon and Sandy Young. So please give those And one board member is rotating off after wonderful service to the Alliance and prior board service to the Mississippi Center for Nonprofits. Josie Shoemake was a major force on the Center's board, and she has been a dedicated, focused, and incredibly supportive member of the Alliance's initial board. Jo has always been a cheerleader for nonprofits, philanthropy, and volunteers, and she's going to be missed by all of us who have worked with her. We want to recognize her service with a small token of our appreciation. So come on up, Jo. Thank you. You want to say a word?
Short person. Okay. It has been fun. It's also been a little scary. We pulled it off. The wedding is continuing. The couples are getting together well. And I am going to be continuing to come to these meetings because I am a member of the Alliance. I may not be on the board, but this is great work that we're doing together, and it's only going to get better. So thank you very much.
Now for the fun part of our time together, let me introduce the fantastic Jim Hill Choir to get the day started. This group of singers includes students from Jim Hill High School here in Jackson. Between the ages of 14 and 18, they have a stellar concert record, including appearances in Carnegie Hall in New York City, choir competitions across the country and internationally, concerts at the state capitol, and at numerous events across Mississippi. The group is led by Pamela Moody, choir director, and we are honored to have these young people with us today. Please join me in welcoming the Jim Hill Choir.
Gloria
Is that it? Can't we have more? Thank you to those amazing young people, those wonderfully talented, and gifted, and disciplined young people, and their leader, Pam Moody, who does a great job of getting them out into the community and around where they can be seen and heard, and we can see the wonderful things that are going on with groups of young folks like that. And thank you again, Jim Hill High School Choir. Next up, for his final performance, we have the guy who, I think it's fair to say that the Mississippi Alliance of Nonprofits and Philanthropy would not be, probably not even exist, and certainly not have made the strides that it has without the leadership of Sammy Moon over these last few years. And Sammy returned to Mississippi, came home to Mississippi after his sojourn around the country, just wandering and away from home, came back about a decade ago thinking he was going to retire. And little did he know that other people had other things in mind for him, and he was more than willing to share his gifts and talents in really creating an organization that has set really a precedent nationally. We need to keep reminding ourselves nobody else has an organization like this anywhere in the United States of America, and that brings together philanthropy and nonprofits in this way. So we appreciate Sammy. We'll appreciate him more a little later on officially, but he's got to do some of his official duties right now. So please welcome him.
Gosh, what an incredible view to look out at all of you here today and just think about the work that you have done. And the reason for our being is because of you, and to be so grateful, which we are, and I am, for you showing up to the annual meeting today and enjoying that incredible Jim Hill Choir. I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm a little more ready for Beulah Land now. And I'm not ready quite yet. But when the time comes, I'll be more ready. It's just an incredible group of young folks that are getting ready actually to go on another international tour this summer, I believe. So thanks to them again. And again, it's just an honor to be here, and I'll have some more stuff later on if I'm not roasted to the point that I can't speak at that time. But as Lloyd said, there are a couple of business things that we have to do since this is officially an annual meeting, and one of those is to remind you that if you're a member of the Alliance, you should have received in the mail or in the email, we all are email oriented these days, a copy of the minutes from the board meeting and so forth of last time. And if you didn't, there are copies available out at the registration table. The board has reviewed all of those, approved them, and made what changes needed to be made, so you can get a sense of what we've been up to, not only from those minutes, but also there's an annual report out there. There's a couple of other publications that have come out of the Alliance that please take a look and see what's out there and grab the pieces that appeal to you, because it's a good way to learn what the Alliance is about, what we've done, what's been accomplished, and basically how we hold ourselves accountable to be doing with you what needs to be done. So those are out there. The other thing that we always do, and we'll take just a minute here to do this while food is being brought out and before we officially dive into lunch, at which time we'll say it's networking time over lunch, and it's will be time for you to get to know everybody at your table, and we'll spend a bit of time before starting the program, which will actually start during lunch, so you're not going to be finished by the time the program starts, but Stay on schedule. So as I said at our board meeting this morning, this whole retirement thing is going to be new to me. But as you are having work that needs to be done, or particularly as you're having places that you want to go and need a travel companion, I'm going to be available. Or anytime you want to go out to lunch or dinner, just give me a call. I'm going to be around and looking for things to do. So that's my update, is I'm around and available. And so we always at these meetings start out with asking you, what do you want to share? What's going on? Or do you have any announcements that others in the room need to know about? So let's do that this time as well. We'll take a few minutes and then we'll get into, formally saying let's eat together and visit together. But who's got something going on that's important for all of us to know? And don't be bashful, because I know there are things going on for the people in this room. We'll call on somebody. Stuart Rockoff, what have y'all got going? I know that you got stuff going.
We are unveiling a new Freedom Trail marker in Natchez on Monday. And this weekend, I'm going to put in a plug to our friends at the Margaret Walker Center at Jackson State. It's the Creative Arts Festival, and there's a wonderful program today and tomorrow.
That is go. See, now Stuart just modeled what I asked you to do in a perfect fashion and did it quickly and got it done. So who else has got it? Joe Donovan, you always have something going. Who are you playing matchmaker for? Joe is the best broker of getting people together to talk to each other that I know. What you got going, Joe?
One more quick note. The state is in the middle right now of doing what we're calling the MSIP, which is the Mississippi Strategic Initiative Plan. We put four research universities together, Mississippi, the Alliance, and 3 or 4 other groups. So we're looking at Mississippi as a whole, spend about $1 million on this plan, figure out how to take Mississippi and turn it into an emerging technology state over the next year. So about half the people in this room are going to be involved in one form or another. Just right now, we're in the middle of an information gathering session using 2 strategies out of Austin, Texas, to help us kind of figure out how Mississippi becomes the keystone for the emerging technology states in the Southeast. So that's one thing we're in the middle of doing right now.
Fantastic. And any of you that have been involved in the conversations that led up to that and in the ones that are coming up, I mean, this is just something we've got to do. It's not a matter of choosing not to do it. I mean, the state just cannot afford not to do that. So, Joe, thank you for your leadership with that. Who else? Keith Fulcher. What have y'all got going?
Keith Fulcher, Community Foundation of Northwest Mississippi.
I love it.
What we have going on is what we continue during the COVID era. We granted out, thanks to the part of the Maddox Foundation, thank you for Campbell, $1.5 million granted to food pantries and nonprofits providing food, thanks to the technology. But Mississippians in the Mississippi Delta primarily are hungry. You're shaking your head in agreement. Mississippians in the Delta, and now that the terrible tornadoes hit the Delta, we're continuing that effort. Y'all stand up? I want to see y'all. These are the ones doing the work, I'm just the mouth. They're the ones doing the work. So now we're continuing that effort and accepting donations to, I believe, for the food pantries to help keep that food going to the impacted areas of the state for the tornado. So thank you, and shout out to the Community Foundation of Washington County, who's really in the heart and eye of the story. Thank you, Sam, for the call.
Fabulous. Thank you, Keith. And you said something that I think is really important. It's in something that we have learned pretty recently, because we got a grant from the Walton Family Foundation to focus on the Delta region, particularly Kahoma County and the Clarksdale area. And what we're learning is, we all know and knew that the nonprofit capacity is not great in the Delta region. But what we're learning is that it is way less than we thought it was. If you go on GuideStar and you print out a report, it will tell you that Kahoma County has 200 plus nonprofits. we have a consultant that's working with us up there now, and what they're finding is as they start trying to track down those 200 plus nonprofits, they're literally on finding for those that have the capacity to do the work that needs to be done and deliver the services, it's somewhere between 10 and 20. So it's an amazing kind of learning in that what we thought, was going to be an array of people to turn to, and Keith, y'all could probably verify this as well, is much more limited than we thought. So the Delta is going to require even more rebuilding than people were thinking about in the beginning. So, yes, please.
Dina Ray with Bud-God Ministry, speaking for one of those that has capacity in the Delta,
Yes.
in Jonestown, Mississippi, and Tacoma County. I am really excited to let you know that House Bill 1671, I hope I got the number right, has just been passed that is going to assist us in expanding our medical model, which I shared with y'all at the last meeting, that we opened a free medical clinic in Jonestown. They haven't had local care for 17 years. And what we have found and what led us to do this is because, there's a difference between access to care and healthcare coverage sometimes. You can have coverage and have zero access. But this whole town can walk to our clinic, and they do. But we're going to be able to open more clinics now, and not just us, but other nonprofits that are doing medical work in the Delta will have access to this tax credit that can be used to help fund that work. So we're really excited about that.
Fantastic. And glad to hear that what you talked about last time
Make progress.
has
you know?
made great progress. So thank you for the update. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Amber, and I am down in Meridian in Lauderdale County, and several of the nonprofits in Lauderdale County got together and did a countywide shoe drive in order to raise funds for those nonprofits. Lita Palmer spoke at it at the last meeting that we were getting it started. So we're coming to the close of it. We have collected almost 100 bags of shoes. Each bag has 25 pairs of shoes in it. So when we send that off to Funds to Org, the nonprofits that were involved will receive part of those proceeds that we get back. So we are looking to not have all of our nonprofits, spread all out, and we want to have a combined venture, something that, we're not leaving anybody out. So that's where we're at right now in Lauderdale County, trying to have everybody work together instead of somebody over here and somebody over here and people getting left out. So.
What a concept, collaboration. I like that. Who else? Yes, Jim.
I want to take a minute to make an introduction.
Please.
Woodland Hines Education Foundation, in partnership with the Mississippi Humanities Council, has created a Mississippi Consortium for Higher Education in Prison. And we have recently hired a director of that, Yolanda Houston, who's our newest colleague at Woodland Hines. Thank you,
Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Good to
I just want to put in a plug. Two Mississippians, some of you may have known, Kevin and Rosalie Jones, and on the Mississippi Business Journal, went to San Francisco as a development in San Francisco, and they started an international investment of rich people coming together to invest in social enterprises called social capital. It's not even recognized on Wall Street. And they've got investors all over the world to invest in good community projects. Anyway, they're bringing to Jackson 10 days from now, April 24th and 26th. They're bringing 40 national and international leaders to work primarily with our inner city leaders and faith community leaders on economic development. And if you want more information, it's at neighborhoodeconomics.org.
We like when rich people spend their money. Linda, Children's Foundation.
Yes, I'm pleased to note that this summer we will have another round of early childhood council planning grants, RFPs. Last year we had 57. Hey, Cindy, you're really engaged, and there's our board chair. So, and Sammy is a board member as well. But anyway, we had 57 applications from all over the state. We funded 9, and with the help of the Bezos Family Foundation, partnership we have with the children with the Social Science Research Center. We're planning on having 9 more each year for the next 3 years. So, and these are sort of like a prelude of a community coming together to decide what the community wants, if it's a pre-K collaborative, if it's Excel by 5, or whatever it is the community decides to do. And so, lots of great community things. So, anyway, stay tuned. It'll be on our website.
Fantastic. Yes.
Hey everybody, Thomas Gregory with the Mississippi Main Street Association. Just want to tell you all about a training opportunity that we are offering at the end of the month, April 28th in New Albany. We are hosting a promotion training called Marketing Your Downtown as a Destination. It is primarily for Main Street communities, but anybody who is in the business of promoting your community, I think would really benefit from it. We're bringing in a national community branding and marketing expert, Ben Mulgrew, who's going to be spending the day talking about how to market Mississippi communities. So you can find more information about that on our website at msmainstreet.com. Click on the events tab and search for that training event. We would encourage y'all to register and come join us Friday, April the 28th in New Albany.
Fantastic. Thank you, Thomas. Y'all do such great work and appreciate so much helping make Mississippi a better place. Thanks. Vanessa, tell us something y'all have got going. You didn't think I was going to come out?
I'm with Operation Shoestring, and we always have a lot going on. We're dealing with kids from kindergarten to 5th grade, and we're branching into middle school. So that's what we have going on. We're getting ready and gearing up for our summer program that is going to be starting. And so we're going to be, again, branching into middle school children to help make sure that they have a safe and educational place to go to this summer. So please support us in that endeavor.
Yeah, incredibly important work, and y'all have been at it for a while. So anybody that's interested in getting into some of the services there are, that you can get a lot of peer support and peer learning from the team at Operation Shoestring. Jane, why don't you tell about Endow
So Endow Mississippi was an effort that we started 5 years ago to create a 25% state income tax credit for gifts to qualified community foundations, which is all the ones in Mississippi, for gifts to endowment funds. And we have been reauthorized by the legislature for another 5 years. But the good news is that we've upped the cap to $500,000 for a gift, instead of capping it at $200,000, and the overall pool will increase to $1 billion every year for 5 years. So those of you who are nonprofits who don't already have an endowment fund, I would encourage you to go talk to your local community foundation and establish one, because you never know. It's not the reason that donors give, but it is a reason that donors give. And it was because of the transfer of wealth study that we did as one of the first projects of the Alliance that this was able to be established. And so we're very grateful for your support. And thank you, Jamie and Austin, for shepherding this legislation through for us. We're all very excited about it.
Yeah, and just a little addendum onto that is when we were working on that initially, that Teresa Harrison, who's here, had the idea of coming to the group one day and saying, I heard about this thing that was going on in Kentucky. Do we want to do it? And, well, we didn't have any idea what it would take to do it, but 2 years later, lo and behold, we had it. So Teresa, thank you for having the idea. And when we were working on it, we were thinking this is going to accomplish multiple wins. Not only is it going to position community foundations across the state, to be more visible and have a stronger message of what their mission is, it also is going to bring in more money for people in local communities to get services that they're needed, which is probably the most important thing we wanted to do. But we also wanted to increase the diversity of givers. Could we, through a tax credit, bring in smaller gift givers instead of those $1 million givers? How do we bring in more $10,000 givers or $20,000? And that has been a tremendous success. So we now have a pool of givers in the 7 community foundations across the state that is much more diverse in all ways than before we started this. So, we all look at that data and feel like this has been phenomenally successful in the legislature, to their credit, and we will give credit when credit is due. It looked at the success of the program over the last 4 years, 5 years, and said, yeah, not only are we willing to renew, we're willing to improve. So, thanks.
I would argue too that some of these other tax credit programs that they considered in the past are because the lazy groundwork, they look at us here, we actually open the tax code and talk about tax credits because, that's always kind of the scary part for the legislature is what you have to ask everybody. Ask, so everybody, ask.
Well,
We want more tax
I
credits.
would agree with that, and I would add to it, they called us. That never happens. Like, when does a nonprofit get called and said, can you come tell us about your work? Because we think there could be an opportunity here. We were like, well, sure. I mean, we'll do it. So we didn't even lobby for that, which to me, that's huge progress. That means they see opportunity now in things that have already been paved the way. Yeah.
There you go. Well, Caitlin, I knew you were going to ask.
Come on now, of course. Sorry I was late, but the reason why I'm Caitlin from Refill Jackson is I just left the Friday Forum series. I don't know if you have been to Friday Forum before. It was at Koinonia and now at Refill in West Jackson, and today was the first relaunch of Friday Forum. So that is hosted by Jonathan Lee and Nicole McNamee. It's every Friday. Please come. It is a chance to just talk to the community. We had a full house today, first one. So welcome you all to come any Friday. Carol was there. You probably beat me here. And then another announcement at Refill. So you may have heard Loaded Lettuce is actually closed. So the cafe is currently temporarily not open. But we do plan to reopen in July. We'll be opening a social entrepreneurship situation there. So more to come about that in July. But I didn't know if the word had gotten out that the cafe was closed.
Can we make reservations now?
Yes,
right,
you
thank
can.
you.
Holler at me. I have cards. Thanks,
Great.
Sammy.
We're going to get into lunch here, but in kind of closing this out, I hope you really appreciate the variety of work that you heard. I mean, you heard not just kind of social service, but you heard economic development, you heard social services, you heard health care, you heard just policy was talked about. Again, all of that to say it reflects who you people are in the room and the work that you're doing, and the fact that without the nonprofit and philanthropic sector in this state, we would be in a far different position than we are now. So with that, thank you to everybody here. I tell you once again, please start eating, enjoy your food, and visit with people at your table. We will start the program during the meal, so I tell you, you won't get through. Yes, of course you can.
My name is Jeff, and I'm Cindy's partner.
34, I believe.
34 years. I'm starting an initiative to help him figure out what he can do. He takes care of the cats.
That's hilarious.
That's a very true. 34 years it's been. And I try to explain it, and it's still. You're getting to see what I do. So, thank you. So, enjoy your meal. Enjoy your Christmas time.
Nope. And everybody who's into this morning. Yeah, I'm ready. Well, you probably don't want music to play if you're on the screen because of the copyright strikes.
True.
How are you?
Where's the slides from?
I don't know how long though.
I just hope that I can fast. I might unplug it real quick and look and see what the battery's like.
Oh.
I probably got I think I'm gonna take a, are you at table 6? I think I'm at table 9. Is that 6 or 9 right there? It's a train.
You gonna eat? They got some plate. They got some plate there for you.
Oh, he's already back there?
Salad right now.
Oh,
Wait, hold on.
with that Darby chicken?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, well.
I don't see it, unless they pull out, but I don't see it in any colors. There's a black one there. I'll just take it on the side.
Hello again. Hello again. Hello again. As I promised you, we're going to start the program while you're finishing eating, and I see most of the pieces of cake are still on the table. So enjoy the rest of your meal. But there is a program that is going to be, I think, a lot of interest to you all in the room, and it's a great group of folks that are going to be presenting, and beginning with Jim McHale, who is President and CEO of the Woodward Hines Education Foundation. And as I say a couple of things about Jim, I will begin by saying that when I was first getting going again in Mississippi and starting to work with the Mississippi Association of Grant Makers, which was one of the two groups that merged to form the Alliance, the Grant Makers Association, or MAG as we lovingly refer to it, didn't have a home. We didn't have a place, an office. And Jim was new in town, having come here from the Kellogg Foundation, and had taken up the leadership role at Woodward Hines. And he and I had dinner one evening and ended up with him saying, well, if you don't have any other place to go, why don't you come and share space with us? I got a cubicle or two at the office that you can have. So, you know, Jim, you in doing that and offering that up and allowing us to be there for a couple of years or more, you helped birth what has now become the Alliance. So, you know, yeah. So, you know, those in-kind gifts can sometimes be just as important as the cash gifts. And not only, I will mention that there has been cash gifts too. So, Jim, we're grateful to you being here. You're going to introduce the other folks that are going to be part of the presentation. But y'all, thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for making a difference in Mississippi. And Jim,
Let me just clarify, Sammy, now that you're on fixed income, that free housing does not continue. You and Jeffrey are going to be on your own.
The roast has begun.
But I do seriously want to commend you, Sammy. I don't look at this as a retirement. I see it as more of a graduation. You're graduating from this, and I'm sure you're going to go on and do great things. Everybody knows Sammy is just a remarkable fundraiser. In fact, Sammy, 2 Sundays ago, I was thinking of you because every day is Palm Sunday to Sammy. So, let me start by a show of hands, whose organization here is involved in early childhood development? Okay, put it down. What about literacy? Who's focused on the issues of literacy? Pre-K through 12 education? After-school programs? Support of low-income families? Economic development? Workforce development? Any new scholarships? How about post-secondary education? Well, I would submit that all of you who raise your hands play a significant role in what you're going to be hearing about today of trying to increase post-secondary opportunities and credentials for citizens of Mississippi. Today we have the opportunity to hear from 2 remarkable individuals who I've had the privilege of being able to work very closely with, particularly during this first year. The Woodward Hines Education Foundation, through the request for proposal, identified the Public Education Forum, which is part of the Mississippi Economic Council, to lead Ascent to 55%. And they had the wisdom to be able to hire an executive director in Jean Massey. Jean serves as the executive director. For those of you who know Jean, she spent more than 30 years in public education. She was a principal for 12 years. She worked for the Mississippi Department of Education for 10 years, focused on programs to support college and career readiness. And most recently, she's worked for the Southern Regional Education Board. She started her position this past fall. Dr. Jason Dean, who has a lot of jobs, a lot of irons in the fire. He serves as an advisor and a consultant to Ascent to 55%. One of his day jobs is Senior Vice President to the Path Company, as well as the Executive Director of Independent Colleges in Mississippi. His extensive background in government, he was the former Education Policy Advisor to the former Governor Haley Barbour. He was the former Chair of the State Board of Education. He was a White House Fellow. And I can give you all these wonderful credentials. But the most important thing about these 2 individuals is they believe in Mississippi. They love Mississippi. And they really do believe that we can make Mississippi the best place in which to be born and in which to grow up. So let me turn it over to Jean and Jason.
Thank you. Thank you for having us today. It's going to be awful hard for me to sit in the seat and do this quick PowerPoint because as a teacher and principal, you didn't sit much. So I'm going to give it a try. Also during this, we're going to go through this PowerPoint very quickly because this is just to give you a background. What we'd like to do is have a little bit of time at the end so that if you have any questions, that you have a chance to talk with us. So Jason and Jim will both jump in with me on this. And what we're really looking at today and talk about is how do we secure our future? How do we really go about looking at how we can secure the future of Mississippi? I want you to think about this. And like, this is not going to work. I knew it.
This is why we hired her. Take control.
Alright, said that in the next 10 to 20 years, they do not think they'll have the workforce they need. We also, for every percentage point we can increase our attainment, that is the possibility of saving our state $20 million. Increasing revenue from income tax, different types of taxes, but serving in those social issues that you work with every day, putting people back in. We are currently, our employment of individuals that can work in Mississippi, only 54.6% are employed at this time. 54.6% of us are supporting the rest of the state. That's 10 percentage points below the national average. So if you remember anything today, remember that, okay? And at one time in 2018, we were ranked as the #1 state for kids leaving high school going straight to college. The bad point of that is by the next year, only we were ranked 38%, because so many didn't return for their second year. So when we start about talking about attainment, it's not just to get them there, but to have them complete. This really came about, Jim talked about, this started with the Education Achievement Commission, the EAC, which is made up of all of our universities, community colleges, our K-12, our private universities, and they set our attainment rate back in 2020 at 55%. And I laughed and told Jim and them when I came back, I felt like what I was working on 4.5 years ago before I left and went to SREB and worked across the country. We were at the point at that time just trying to get a rate. So we finally had a rate to work on, so I felt like we were picking up and moving forward. The 2 points that the EA set were for 2030, our attainment rate would be 55%. By 2035, we would be at 60%. So with the grant that Jim has, the Women Minds has, we've been working on this. We've found a lot since we started digging with this. Jason will jump in and talk about this in a few minutes. But even at 60%, that is not where we need to be as a state. According to the Southern Region Education Board, SREB, in our southern states, we need to be at 70% of having some type of post-secondary education. When we talk about this, what we're referring to is not always an associate degree or bachelor's degree or both. Those are very important. But we're also talking about those short-term, long-term certifications that can be earned, that individuals can support a household very, very well. So we're talking about all different types. So when we talk about public post-secondary and attainment, we're talking about a job that can have a sustainable wage for them. So we don't want to get this confused with just having a degree from college. Because to us, post-secondary college is any type we go to. When we talk about that, the workforce credentials are one. Those are those industry certifications. Those are those career credentials, those technical credentials. And I'm a mom standing up here and telling you those are very important because I have a son that started out as a diesel mechanic that's running a shop now. He made a lot more right now than I ever made teaching school. And I have a lot more years of sitting in the classroom. So we've got to honor those types of things. And then the academic degrees. Those are so very, very important. We've got to help more of our students, especially our social kids that really need it, that have never had the chance to earn those associate degrees, to earn those bachelor's degrees. How do we stack all of this in clear pathways to help our kids move forward? Not just our kids. I want you to think about this. How many adults out there right now cannot get the job that they need because they don't have the training necessary to sustain a family wage? So how do we bring them back in also? If you really look at this, this is where we are. In Mississippi, our current attainment rate is 48.5%. This is based on Lumina data. Our goals are the 55 and the 60%. Y'all, to get to the 60%, we're talking about over 270,000 additional people with the certification. That can't just be the kids leaving high school, because that's only about 25,000, 26,000 now a year. So how do we get to those numbers? So when we start thinking about it. At our current rate, about 12.2% are in our certification areas. About 36.3% are in associate degrees and our bachelor's degrees, which puts us at that degree. Now, you can't see this very well, but I will be glad to send you the copy. This is what we've got to focus on. If our state's attainment rate is 48.5%, when you break it down by counties, we have counties in this state that go from everywhere from 18% to 53%. That's a huge gap. That's a huge gap. So how do we really work to help those counties where those are there? And it's more so than a county, it's those regions. Because we in Mississippi, we all know it's nothing to get in our car and drive 50 miles to go to work. So how do we look at this regionally to be able to help move those forward? Folks, I don't care what you say. I live in Rankin County. Y'all are sitting just outside of Rankin County right now, and we keep saying how great we are. We're not even in Rankin County at the state attainment rate. So how do we move our counties forward? We really want to look at this. One of the first things we did was we did 8 listening tours across the state in each one of the Accelerate Mississippi's 8 ecosystems to hear from everyone. We've really talked to, I can't tell you how many meetings we've been to with our IHLs, with our community colleges, with workforce, just to talk and hear and see what's going on. We've read enough data over the last few months that, look, it all starts running together. You know how it is when you start doing all that research and pulling all of that together. But we really started looking at our data collection process with our state longitudinal data system. What we're finding is we're missing a lot. We're missing a lot. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in there. So back to this data point of 48.5%, as you saw, that comes from Lumina, and it's divided into those 2 categories: workforce credentials and what is pretty clear is academic credentials. Those are associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees. And they're getting that information mostly from U.S. Census data, the American Community Survey. And we work closely with Lumina. We went to Indianapolis a year or 2 ago. I talked to several of those folks yesterday and this morning, in fact. And the realities are that they're simply reporting that number based on what they can see. And the interesting thing about being from Mississippi, at 2.9 million people, less than 1% of the nation's population, you get to know how things work pretty easily. You start asking questions, and this isn't a pushback on Lumina, but what we found out is we actually have a lot higher number of Mississippians who have particularly the workforce credentials. It's just not being reported because it's never been asked to be reported. So where we are right now is one potential recommendation is to say to our workforce directors at our community colleges, that previous slide that talked about the multiple levels of workforce credentials, industry recognized certification, career certificate, that's a 15-hour, a 30-hour, and a 45-hour. That's not being reported. So last 1 year, there were 70,000 unduplicated number, 70,000 Mississippians who accessed that. I don't know yet if they all got a credential, but I bet you a bunch of them did. And I bet you of that number, a bunch of them stayed in Mississippi. So when I share all that is we're continuing to poke at that number and just see exactly where we are on the number. And we have an advisory committee to run this through, but we're not going to fudge the numbers, but I hope to have a big announcement pretty soon to say, actually, at 48.5, we're here.
So we've learned a lot, and from the tours, different groups. And the thing is, every one of them says, we'll be glad to report it. Where do we report it to? So that's part of the process we're going to. We've got a lot going on with our different, like our rehabilitation centers, looking and seeing what else is going on there. But our prison industry is a huge piece. That's a huge piece, and we've had lots of conversations with them to be able to make sure that when they're ready to come back in the system, they have something to come back to. So how do we work with that? And really what we're doing is really how do we make sure that we look toward the future. We talked about the technology piece. That's a future piece. What are the economic growth recommendations we can come out with this? We don't just need to get a pathway or a credential for a student or an adult. Where can that credential take me? What's the next level? How do we build on it? How do we make sure it's not a stopping point? It's easy in the academic side because you can get the bachelor's degree, you can get the master's degree, you get the doctorate degree. Well, how do we go from the credentials to the associate degree and make sure it's a clear pathway? We really want to focus on kind of 3 areas. How do we make policy for our producers? And I'll talk to you in a few minutes about who our producers are. What policies do we need out there for our consumers? And where do we focus these areas to really be able to define and execute to get to this level that we need to be to? We really are based on our tours. We found out in a hurry, we made some quick changes of what was initially in our original proposal for our grant. Jim was all behind us because we were able to hear. Y'all, one of the things Jim asked you at the beginning, how many of you were working with early childhood? Without a doubt, one of the first things we heard from all 8 tours from everybody, that was a barrier to getting a certificate, to earning their certificate, was that early childhood piece. And it was everything from not being able to have early childhood or being able to have daycare services to place kids in so I could go back and get my certificate of certification, especially if I were a working mother. But not only that, is when it was offered. There were so many people in some of the business and industries that were talking about changing nighttime. If I worked at night and I didn't have family close by, I didn't have access to daycare. Then there was some talking about weekends. They would offer training on weekends, but there was no place to put the child, over the weekend. So that was a true barrier. Other barriers are things that you're working on, providing clothing, providing an extra dollar for transportation to get to and from training. So we identified a lot of barriers there. And what we really came up with were these 5 A's. These were the things that we had to be able to look at as we move forward and make sure that everything we do is around, is this an alignment piece? How do we align everything we're doing? How do we make it accessible? Y'all, if you want to go to post-secondary, there are lots of opportunities and dollars there to be there, but not just to get you there, but to get you through. So that's part of the accessibility piece. Affordable, how do we make sure it's there? The accountability piece. How do we make sure this is accountable, affordable? How do we make sure that the awareness? That may not sound like much, but that awareness piece is huge because most people don't know all of the jobs we have. And we really found this out. We did a lot of work with the career coaches. You've heard a lot about that. The career coaches, as they came in, they had no idea of all the opportunities for kids within their area. The counselors, the preachers, the different people in the area. But one of the biggest barriers sometimes are parents themselves. My kid's going to college, okay? What's your kid going to do when they get to college? My kid's going to college. We want them to go to college, but we want it to be more. Part of the reason we go from 1 to 38% is because when we go to college, we don't have a clear understanding of what we're going to do to get through it. So changing some of those perspectives. And the accountability piece. How do we hold ourselves accountable that the number we're getting to and how we get there is really there? And those are big issues that we really wanted to look at around these 5 A's as we move forward. We talked about our producers. Our producers, and you can't see this really well, are our 30 colleges in Mississippi. Our 15 public and private universities, our 15 public community colleges. How do we all work together around this to make this move forward and all of us get on the same page? And that's not as easy as it sounds. Then, when you look at it, how do we wanted to break down the attainment, and a lot of this work is going to fall to our community colleges because that's where those short-term certifications, those long-term certifications, those the associate's degrees. So we're looking at breaking that attainment down in those areas, and that's what you see on the board of these 15 areas. For example, North Mississippi's current attainment rate is 28.3%. Mississippi Gulf Coast is 32.4%. But how do we work in those regions to really put that accountability out there to get them to help us move forward? And what we're really talking about are our consumers. Our consumers are our high school kids coming out. We need to do a much better job of, number one, them being prepared for college, whatever that college is, whether it's a certification, whether it's an associate degree, whether it is a bachelor's degree or higher. Not just having them ready, but having them knowing what they want to do, or having a very good idea. We've got a huge gap. Lumina starts their data at age 25 to 64. That's what their data is based on. How do we make sure those 18 to 24, when they enter that Lumina data, have what we need? Because that's where we can really move forward. So looking at that group of individuals. We've got a lot of adults out there with some college, but no degree. How do we bring them back in? There's been a lot of work done on that, but we still have more to do. Our National Guard and our military here in Mississippi is huge. But how many of them come out with nothing but years of experience? How do we tap into that to get them ready to enter our workforce? And then we talked about some of the others, our prison industry and those individuals that are currently out there that may be working in a low-paying job, that they would like to be able to come back in and get them involved in this. So those are kind of the consumers we need to think about. When you look at this very quickly, at the current time, if you looked at this, you'd think we're in great shape. Of the jobs in Mississippi, 27% of them require a bachelor's degree or higher. We're graduating 27% of our people with a bachelor's degree. Here's the issue. It doesn't align with what the state needs, where those bachelor's degrees need to go. So how do we get that message out? High school, only 16% of the jobs now in Mississippi can you get that you only need a high school diploma. But 23% of our people only have a diploma. So what happens to that group of people? Then our middle skill jobs, those with associate degrees, those long-term certificates, 57% of the jobs are needed there, but we only have 50% of our people with them. So you see where our big gaps are and where we need to really look and start moving forward. And not just get you a certificate, get you an associate degree, get you a bachelor's degree, but what's out there that you can do with it once you finish, making that very clear. And when we really talk about this, these are 5 areas that we really wanted to talk about. Our data is huge. We've got to figure out what we really have and what we don't. We've got to look at how do we improve the awareness of our stakeholders. You know, we get this message out to you. How do you help us get that message out to your people? Identify and align those career pathways. We know where our high growth areas are, so what do we do to help make sure we're aligning with what we need? Wraparound services, those are huge. The child care piece, the transportation piece, the clothing piece. You know, kid gets to school and they think, well, my tuition's paid for, but they forget they gotta eat and have books and everything else in the world. So those wraparound services. And we've really got to do a better job of aligning our K-12 system with what's needed. You know, what's out there? Where do we get that readiness piece? How do we move forward? So, questions. That's kind of a quick run through of where we are. We want to hear from you. How can you help? What do you see in this and what do you do? And ask us any questions you might have. Sure.
One thing Gene alluded to, but I want to be very explicit about this too, is really looking at this for racial equity lens. If you were to break that data down by African American males and white males, you're going to see a tremendous disparity. If you break it down by white females and African American females, again, you're going to see a tremendous disparity. So we really got to be focused on the entire population, but really be looking at what are our strategies to make sure that more people of color are having access to public education and are adequately prepared to take the types of jobs that we want to recruit to Mississippi.
Should I just shout it out?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that information. That was great. I was just curious how these efforts are aligned with some of our state agencies, like the development districts, some of the WIOA programs, and also some of these education and training programs through SNAP and TANF.
Yeah, great question, and to me, it is all about alignment. I mean, awareness, accountability, all that's critically important, but from a policy point of view, it's just aligning all these existing resources and not duplicating efforts.
Right.
And I've always seen this as a real opportunity to work with our newly created Office of Workforce Development, Accelerate Mississippi. We've met with them frequently. They are the state workforce investment boards. That's who they report to, and WIOA money flows through them. So that's number one, is that workforce connection. Number two is through IHL and the Community College Board, and really the 15 community colleges where they exist in their separate boards. But my big opportunity I see is with MDE and in the K-12 world. And we really can't do this without aligning high school policy with this goal. And that last slide was talking about the accountability model. That's really not what I've talked about for the last months and months and months, because currently we have a system that's really set up for mostly a 4-year university college ball, and that's critically important. We don't want to take away from that. But the realities are these industry recognized certifications, these certificates that you're a lineman, you're a pipe fitter, you have some IT degree that you can go out and make $50,000 a year without necessarily an associate's degree. I heard a story just last week about somebody doing that at Northwest Community College. The guy had a 30-plus, ACT. So to me, besides the alignment, I think an alignment in the cultural awareness and the talking point of college is college is college, and not if you don't do this, then that. It's all college. I respectfully try and, when I hear someone say, you didn't go to college, you got a lineman, certificate. Where do you get that? At Colin in Simpson County. That's a college. And so I think just talking about that, but having an accountability model at the K-12, particularly in the high schools, that really follow that and incent all the money that goes to our K-12 schools through MAP and the decisions that get made to follow that is really a perfect example of agency alignment.
Most definitely. And when we did the 8 tours, it was with Accelerate Mississippi. We were together with all of that. They have the same information. We've been working very closely with them on the career coaches. We've actually done some work there. This cannot stand in isolation. One of the things we did a couple of weeks ago was we brought together Accelerate Mississippi. We brought together the Skills Coalition, the Woodward Hines Group, Get to College Group, the Community College Board, the IHL Board, Public Broadcast System. Because one of the things that Jim did for us before I even came on board was he secured a website for sent to 55%. And so we started talking about this, well, what do we need? And we started looking at other websites and we said, why would we recreate something that's already out there? So we brought everybody together to look and see and talk about what they had. And nobody in the room even knew some of the others were doing. So those are part of what we hope we can do, is bring groups together. Like you brought this group together. How do we bring others together? Because y'all, there's some great work going on in the state. But we're so fragmented, we each have so little money that we don't get to the bigger picture. So how do we start doing it?
I have 3 kids in college right now, so I feel like I'm somewhat in a unique situation. My entire family's in college at the moment, to observing what they had missing. Because I also work in an area in the Delta, in an area where the kids there don't have the same opportunities that mine had in Madison County. However, I saw a huge gap, and I think some of it is starting to be addressed, that there's no real conversation about what career paths were available. There was no wood shop and all the stuff. Like, one of my kids who knows what he would have done with it, but he just wanted to learn how to work on cars. There really wasn't an opportunity to do that without committing that you're going to go down this long path of you couldn't just take a class, is my point. Like, you couldn't be an elective. It could have been potentially gotten a kid interested in something that they never even got exposure to. So I really do think there's a huge opportunity to learn about different careers, starting way down in kindergarten, having more career days, or, there was one career fair where they give them, like, this is how much money you make, this is what your rent's going to
fall out of my seat, yes.
Yeah, so we'll stand on the soap. And as a person that's been in education most of her life and tried to get some things, it's got to be more than a checkbox. All the schools will tell you they do, and I'm not bashing schools, y'all, a lot. They work so hard, they do work. But part of it is back to what Jason said around that accountability system. How many in this room really know, do you know what the accountability, if your school is an A, B, C, or D? Jason kind of made me think about this a few minutes ago. And if you do you know why they're that number? And what does that accountability really mean?
I want to show a hand. Who can sort of define what the accountability model is and what that means when you get an A to an F? I'm not going to call on anybody. You've got
Former teacher.
55% of the state budget goes to this, all right? And all these grades are given on this 1,000-point system for a high school. We can talk about the 700-point system for elementary, middle, later. But of that number, like only 25 points out of 1,000 go for what you described. So the reason that happens is, as you would do if you were in the same position, local superintendent try and get that A. And in order to get the A, they focus on that academic assessments, proficiency, growth. That's 700 points. 200 points for graduation. At least 25 points for college and career readiness, 25 points for acceleration. What I want to see happen, and the State Board of Education could do this, is give some room for college and career readiness, because that's going to drive resources to exactly what you're saying. I mean, it's human nature. They want to be successful. They want to get bashed for, whatever. But I mean, I think schools can and want to do a lot more and should be recognized.
And with the help of Woodward Hines too, to get to college, this past year, a graduation requirement that every senior has to do is a class called College and Career Readiness. But it's not where it needs to be. It's not that.
The wrong year.
It's good in the junior and senior year for the FAFSA. But what it does, that should not be the only time they hear that information. It's exactly what you said. There should be bits and pieces of that all the way through K-12. That's where we've got to go. And that's why the K-12 system is so important. How do we build that K-12, and I don't want to say checklist, process. What is the process that can be done? And there's lots that can be. There's a lot of, you take some of the work that Create's doing. You take some of the work that the Gulf Coast is doing. You take what Gulfport High School did, their K-12. There are models out there we can use, so that's what we have to do. But that's one of the reasons, what you just said, that we go from number 1 to 38, because we do not do a good job of helping them know what their path is.
One last comment, the system is successful as what it's set up to do, which is to get them there. It's not successful at preparing them once they're there. That's why you got the drop off. Number 1 in the nation for going to college, then down to 38.
They don't know what they're doing. My son took it the second half of his senior year, and he was like, too much total waste of my time. I needed this my junior year when I was getting ready to apply. And he had me to help him, but there's a lot of kids that don't have a parent that's gonna walk them through everything.
And a lot of schools are now teaching it the last semester of their junior year and the first semester of their senior year to take care of both pieces. That's what's been successful.
It's one point, when we're recruiting an emerging technology company, or when we get an emerging technology or knowledge-based company that was developed here, and we're trying to convince them to stay in Mississippi, they ask 2 things. One is, tell me about the place. So, Main Street, this is your job. Tell me about the place, quality of life, and 2, tell me about town. They don't ask about tax incentives. They don't look for, grants and other monies. Big companies do that. Emerging technology companies, place, and town. That's what they care about.
Joe, for you, like to me, this is what this is about. Obviously, we want to develop, human potential. That's what we're focused on. What's the trajectory that we can set someone's course of life? But ultimately, at the end of the day, at MDA, they go into a boardroom and they say, all right, we're down to some place in Mississippi, South Carolina, and Kentucky. All right, we really like the incentives, but they're all the same. What's the pipeline look like? We're going to have to go to South Carolina. So at the end of the day, and then that raises, the high tide raises all ships. So you got more money coming in, so you can start doing other things. So Dave Dennis would tell you, run a construction company. It's all about getting, your human resources and to sort of make us competitive for those other places. That's why we're losing these.
Tell me about town.
I want to talk about marketability, because in the state that may have achieved degrees, may have, achieved certificates, but can't get a job, okay? And one of the reasons I think is they have no experience. And I wish in our state, we had a more robust, internship, apprenticeship for jobs that we know we have these vacancies for.
You are 100% right. You think about how many of you, and you don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you worked in high school? There was a job out there for you to do. Those jobs now, that 16% that you might have gotten when you were in high school are being taken over by somebody that's already graduated and is already out there. So they're not jobs for our young people. So if we don't get that internship built and that work-based learning piece built, they're never going to get the experience. So that's a huge part of it.
I'm gonna give you one more data point, and I got the 0 minutes. So, first of all, work-based learning and apprenticeships are part of the accountability model reform that I'm talking about, so that you get points at the high school level for going out and do this. But I was on the state workforce investment board years ago. George Slogo was the chairman, and he said it, and it's in Spark Beta, and it's still true. You take 100 ninth graders. Okay, today we got about 87% graduating, which is awesome. About half of those, based, what you just heard, end up going to some post-secondary ed experience, but about half of those actually graduate. So if you're down to 22, 23% when I'm talking about a 4-year degree, only 6% of that number take a job in which they got a degree. And my point is I've done the math. When you start thinking about the MAEP, base student cost, the full-time equivalency through post-secondary ed, you have invested $100,000 in that individual, and your payoff in that pipeline is 6%. That is a horrible return on that. So these marketing and these connections. I mean, look, I went to college. This other bit international studies degree. Okay, what does that mean? Like, so I'm in that group. I'm not casting. I understand. But the moral of that story is like we got to do a much better job like connecting like what you see your work world desires with what you're getting in the school. So.
With respect to alignment, which I think is absolutely critical to align everything, there's been some concern about our accountability measures and others in other states' accountability measures because they don't align with the NAEP, National Assessment of Educational Progress. Is there any discussion around aligning our accountability measurements with NAEP so that ours look authentic? Because people are really concerned about are we really making NAEP grades when the NAEP
I think the closest you're going to get are your literacy scores coming out of 3rd grade. And I don't know, are you familiar with how NAEP scores are got, how they get that? NAEP takes a random, like, let's say, this year we're going to do 10% of your population. Well, they do 10% of the population of every state. Out of that 10%, 5% is going to be from this social level, this level, this level, this type of school. So they try to get a good base across the state. That NAEP test is only given to a very few kids in our schools. It's not all kids. You have to be selected to be in there, and it's randomly given to students. So even though we get a pretty good random sample of what our kids are doing, your best look right now coming out of elementary is the reading scores that they get. Those are becoming more. Now, when they were first set, they were set very low. They've gone up a little bit and a little bit more. Before the pandemic, we were beginning to see in school a growth in the kids that were coming out of those 3rd grade, which would have kept sending us up. But then the pandemic hit and we leveled out. So we've got to get started back on that trajectory again. There's no plans to give, the NAEP test is never going to be given to every student. Now, the test that we give to our students, yes, they may need to be looked at and changed to be more on the level, It's not like the Stanford Achievement Test, that one time it took. These are now state-made tests that our teachers have won. So that's the piece. And when you get to high school, you're talking about 4 end-of-course tests. You're talking about a U.S. history test, an Algebra 1 test, an English 2 test, and a biology test. How many people hire kids based on those 4 tests? How many people, I'm in education, I was sitting there, I know, You know, how many people really care what they made on the end of those 4 tests? That doesn't get them into college. It doesn't get them the next step. So it's like Jason said, how do we start looking at our accountability model to change it to get what we need when we come out?
Yeah, let me just say thank you to Jim. And part of the way you gauge whether a program has been successful or not is what you all just did, and that is immediately you started the interaction, the question, the asking how does it relate to, how does it, all of them, what you just did. So congratulations to you all. It meant you were paying attention, and it meant you had questions, and it meant you were looking for how do we align with it, and it meant you were challenging yourself to think about all of those things. So congratulations to you all in doing that. Bailey, did you have a little real quick shout out that you wanted to do? I thought so.
I'll just stand here. I'm sure y'all can hear me. My name is Bailey Shelton. I work for the Children's Foundation of Mississippi. I'm the Communications and Outreach Coordinator, and I'm also the State Administrator for the Kids to College project that Entergy launched with us in January. So some of y'all might be familiar with 529 child savings accounts. These are free savings accounts that you can open up for children younger than 16, and when they turn 18, you can use the money for anything post-secondary related. So like they said, that's not just college tuition, that's trade school, that's tech school, that's if you're in a program that you need certain resources for, you can use the money for that. And how this project is different than the current 529 savings accounts that we have already is that if a family lives in an Entergy household or is an Entergy customer and they fall within a certain range of criteria, they can get a $50 match for the first $50 that they put into the savings account from Entergy. So that's the incentive for that, but you don't have to be an Entergy customer or fall within those qualifications to make the account and start saving. So I have a ton of these brochures with me. If anyone is interested in taking some back for their organization, for their facility, to send out, to use the information for a newsletter. It's got all the sign up info and everything. So I'll be here if anyone wants to grab me to get brochures or my card to talk about this project further. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey. Thank you. And again, a shout out and thanks to the Children's Foundation for the work that you're doing. It's just incredibly important. You know, when any of us get to the point where we start talking about retiring or doing something like that, you realize that, you know, your career has been built on the work of others. And so, you know, before we move into what was labeled as a tribute, but as I see more people come in, I know it's going to be a roast at this point. What I want to say is, you know, I'm fortunate that I have been able to do that. And I want to say just a few thank yous before we get into the let's take on Sammy moment that Linda Southwood's going to lead us through. And I want to thank a few people, and mostly Lloyd said it in some of his remarks, and particularly when you named the board and let us know that Josie's leaving. The board has just been amazing, and you cannot do the work that has been done through the Alliance without a board that understands what it is you're trying to do, understands why it needs to be done, or at least is willing to believe enough to say, let's take a risk, and is willing to support the work as it evolves over time. And so, you know, the board that Lloyd identified in his remarks has been remarkable. And for me, it's another group of people who, from the beginning, I have been able to, you know, under their tutelage, under their leadership, under their willingness to take a risk with us, you know, we've been able as a staff to do what needed to be done. So I again thank you, board members, and I encourage you, board members, who are going to go on with the Alliance to don't get bashful. Be ready to take on new challenges and new things that need to be done, and you know, push to get things done. So thank you, board. The other folks who have to be recognized, there's a couple of other sets of folks, is that no executive director and those of you sitting in the room that are in that position, I know will nod in agreement on this. Executive director is not who gets the work done, it's the staff. And we may help provide some of the vision and some of the conversations that go around that, but when it comes down to it, it's the staff that's implementing, that's thinking, that's doing, that's innovating, that's making things happen on a daily basis. Sometimes I talk about what it takes to make the sausage. That's where the sausage gets made. And so we're just unbelievably lucky to have the staff that we have at the Alliance. And, at least I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. I won't embarrass you by saying you got to stand up. But Ellen Collins, who is the associate director, and I'll be saying more about her later, has just been a godsend. And, thank you, Ellen, for all you've done. DeLorean King, who is our learning and capacity building associate. DeLorean manages all of our consulting contracts and the technical assistance that we provide to you all and others in the field. It's a huge job. Thank you, DeLorean. Jamie Raspberry, who is the Director of Policy and Strategic Partnerships. Jamie knows everybody in the state and maybe related to about half of them. So if you need to get to somebody, come to Jamie Raspberry because she can get you to them and is doing a great job in evolving our policy agenda. Jason Easley is our bookkeeper. Jason is the one who, when he gets expense reports, comes to you and says, you can't do that. And so we're grateful for that most of the time. So Jason, thank you. Sandra Hodge, who is our Chief Program Officer and sitting here. Sandra is the newest, I guess, member of the team, but is coming in with great gusto and coming in with fabulous experience. Comes to us from Tougaloo College, where she also had some fundraising experience. So, Jim, the palm of Sandra will be at this point as well. So, Sandra, welcome Sandra Hodge. And then, the last one on my list is very special to me because Sandra Johnson has been with the Alliance and from the MAC days, and is glue that holds us all together and holds the organization together and keeps us on target and focus on what needs to be done. So, staff team, thank you. I got it. Staff team, thank you so much. And what you just saw from Ellen is somebody saying, which is a very important role to be, but I got it covered. The other group that I come to that I want to do special thanks to is, we have been incredibly fortunate from the beginning to have a set of consultants that have worked with us and have also just been critical to the evolution of the organization. From, last year we recognized Nancy Perret, but I recognize her again this year because Nancy, from the very beginning of conversation about what the Alliance might look like as it was being formed, was there to help think that through and handle just an incredible amount of work during that period and continues to do so. And we had a great conversation before this meeting started about Nancy telling me in my retirement time what I can do, and that is begin to work on documenting the process of where we started, how we evolved, and how we got to where we are now, because others in the field that are doing work that will be similar to ours will need those lessons learned. So Nancy has claimed that time already. Melissa Butler is our communications consultant, and you're sitting back there by yourself. Melissa is working with us to develop messaging, to keep our consistency of brand, to keep our social media, to keep our website, to do all of the communication stuff that we have to think about and have to do going. And so we're delighted that you're part of the team now as well, Melissa. I want to mention a couple of more. We talked about Endow Mississippi and some other things. We had a wonderful team, and I'm going to refer to them as legislative consultants that worked with us from 10-1 Strategy Group, Ladarian Ammons, and John Morgan Hughes being the primary representative, particularly Ladarian. You all were great to work with and provided such value to us in understanding how legislative stuff works and how to move something along. So thank you all for that. I want to mention one other that is very important, and you're going to be hearing, I think, more about this in the future because we're just beginning to scratch the surface on this, but I find it incredibly exciting, I think. I don't understand it well enough to know whether it really will be or not, but I think it is. And that's a fellow named David Collins, who's over here next to Nancy. And what David used to be with an international consulting firm in Canada, and he and his wife moved here, and he is just, you know, if you live up to what I think that you're going to live up to, a very brilliant person in the area of information technology, particularly around artificial intelligence and predictive modeling strategies. And he is working with us, and again, something that I don't know if anybody else across the country is doing this, but how do you take existing data that you have, particularly from 990s, and all of you have to fill out 990s, right? How do you take that multiplicity of data and build a predictive model that instead of you waiting until you get into trouble, can predict through algorithm activities, I don't know if algorithm activity, through algorithms, where you're most likely to encounter troubles in the future. So it begins to push us to be more proactive with the work and with the design of our organizations. And then the question after that becomes, well, if you're able to predict where you're going to be most vulnerable, then how do you build artificial intelligence into the conversation to begin early on telling you what you need to do about it and how you need to go out and do it, and actually doing it with you?
You nailed it.
Did I get that? I have no idea what all that means. But you've done a good job of at least letting me get up and make sentences that to you make sense. But I think that's, you know, for the field, something that's incredibly exciting because, you know, if you're looking at the tremendous exponential change in technology that's happening now, that is going to be the future. So how does that apply to philanthropy and nonprofits? So you're going to see more from us on that as it evolves. So thank you, David. After that group of folks, I want to say something about Jan Eastman and our VISTA members. We have VISTA members that are located geographically across the state, and it was Jan Eastman who originally was on the center board that originally started saying to us, you know, there's work that needs to be done, and there's work that needs to be done around cleaning up our database and getting rid of duplicative entries in that database. There's work that needs to be done about outreach and engagement of nonprofits and knowing about regionally who's doing what. There's work that needs to be done in membership recruitment, volunteer support, connections to the service. Anyhow, Jan was a real advocate that was saying to us that there's more that needs to be done, and we can look at the resources that can come through VISTA members to make that happen. So long story short, we recognize Jan. She's not here today, unfortunately, but we do have a little token of our appreciation for Jan Eastman for her role. But we do have VISTA volunteers who are here with us today. So y'all, if I call your name, raise your hand. Leah Bishop from the Mississippi Gulf Coast, Amber Willis Hayes from East Mississippi, Deborah Grace, Golden Triangle, Northeast Mississippi, Linda Seaton, the Mississippi Delta, Wilnessa Foster, Northwest Mississippi, Bessie Coleman, Central Mississippi, and Justina Garcia, Southeast Mississippi. An incredible group of folks that are doing wonderful work, and the Alliance so appreciates you. So the final thank you that builds on Jim's remarks too is a thanks to our funders. particularly to the Kellogg Foundation. And Rhea, I'm glad you're here. The Kellogg Foundation was the entity that when we first conceived the idea of the Alliance, that was willing to say, that's something that's worth exploring. And we're gonna give you a planning grant. Originally, it was for 18 months, I think, turned into more than 2 years. But we're gonna give you some money to explore this idea. Let's don't jump into it until we know that there's a commitment to do it, until we know both boards are comfortable in moving forward. So let's use the planning grant to do that. That was the most wonderful privilege to have that time and that space and those resources to really think through and do what needed to be done. So Rhea and our Kellogg funding partners, thank you so much. Other funders, not the least of which is Phil Hardin Foundation, and Rebecca, you were Phil Hardin Foundation when that conversation first started. Lloyd has been such an incredible person to keep the relationship going. Y'all are great. There are numerous other funders that have been incredibly important to the Alliance. Rather than go through that whole list, which is extensive, thank goodness. And it does need to be more extensive. Any funder that's in the room that is not on that list, Helen's going to be calling them. But there's a sheet out on the entry table that lists an array of funders that have seen value to the work that's coming out of the Alliance. So for that, we're forever grateful. So with those thank yous, and again, giving tribute to everybody that I've just mentioned, because again, it's off of your work and your commitment and your smarts that I and we have been able to do what needs to be done. I'm going to recognize Jamie Raspberry now, who is going to get us into the tribute roast. Thank you, Jamie.
If you bring sweets to the office, don't let Sammy know. There's my roast. We can always, Sammy leaves a cookie trail or a sweet trail anytime we have anything sugary in the office. But I just wanted to start before I introduce Dr. Southward just by saying a special thanks to Sammy for giving me the opportunity to join the Alliance. I worked in for-profit healthcare for 20 years. I worked for $1 billion healthcare company, and during the pandemic, transitioned out of that, was looking for a new opportunity, and got connected with Sammy by way of somebody that I knew that knew him. And I remember the first time that we talked, and he told me about the creation of the policy unit that was also funded by the Kellogg Foundation and what this work would be. And he said, "Is this something you're interested in?" And I'm so glad that he saw potential in me and gave me an opportunity to be a part of this work. So special thank you to you. And I've been here for 2 years now, so it's been a great journey so far. But without further ado, let the roast begin. So I'm going to bring up Dr. Linda Southward, who's the Executive Director of the Children's Foundation of Mississippi, to kick us off with that.
Well, now you've given me an idea, Sammy. I really never thought about it being a roast, but since 100 of your closest friends are here, let's see what we can do here. So the first is, if you will turn your attention to the screen, and we will cue up some memories of Sammy and probably some photos that Sammy may not have even seen in a long time, but. Let's just start, and then I'll make some remarks after that, and then we've got a couple of other people who are going to help us with some special gifts later on. So let's cue it up.
You gotta turn it up. You gotta turn the volume up.
Can we start over so we can have the music? Because that music is really important. We're gonna start it all over because it's important. Okay. So what about that video? And credit where it's due, Bailey Shelton put that together. So the word. Well, so the wordplay there, really many of you in this room today, but also literally from California to New York and continents away, contributed to that. So when I text, and I've known Sammy a long time, but like, did I really know him? Well, the last couple of weeks, I think, oh, I'm missing a lot. So when I said, Sammy, who are some of your artists and performers? And so thank you for getting the volume there. And I thought, Blondie, Patsy Cline, here we go. Sister Vestal Goodman of the Happy Goodmans, and if you're under 50 and not from the South and Southern gospel, then you might need to Google that. But one of my favorite songs that she sang is I Wouldn't Take Nothing from a Journey Now. And so that's certainly
Sammy, we would not take anything for having the opportunity for the journey that you have been along as well. So when Ellen asked me to make a few remarks in tribute to Sammy, I was first honored, and then I thought, oh boy, that's kind of difficult, because how can you sum up Sammy in just a few minutes? So that's when I thought, well, let's just add some friends and family, and so Sammy got a little concerned. I could tell when he called me on Wednesday afternoon, just sort of out of the blue. Well, I'm driving. I'm glad you're going to do a tribute. And he was so fishing. He was so fishing. And I said, okay, yeah, it's been great, Sammy. I can't wait. And he said, anything I need to know about? Anybody ever heard him say that? Anything I need to know about? I said, no, it's fine. And he kept on. And he was like on Highway 49. I thought this would take a while. And I said, Sammy, I've known you a long time, and I've never said hush. I said, but I'm saying hush. And trust the process. So that's a result of some of this today. So when you look at those words from people everywhere and in how it shaped the heart, so it's symbolic of your heart. Of you and everyone inside and outside these doors, particularly individuals who are trying to find their own pathway. Others that express characteristics of Sammy they wish to emulate in their lives. And many things have already been said today. Some sent letters and others said, well, let's just let me tell you about Sammy. And I took notes, long notes, lots of conversations. The colleagues, and you've already heard, but the Alliance is your family. And so some I will have some names with, some they're just all kind of together as a family, but you'll know who said these probably. He's like Norm from Cheers. Everybody knows his name. My favorite quote from Sammy is when at the end of our staff meeting, go and do good. I just love him for that. I remember meeting Sammy my first day at the Alliance. Everyone made me feel welcome. But I remember his calm and soft-spoken voice assuring me I was a part of the team. He has a quote that he says after addressing our Alliance meeting. I think that quote is, let's get it done. And another person said, in fact, I think you just heard the person say, see the potential in them working at the Alliance. Someone else said the actions of integrity, trust, and appreciation exhibited by Sammy helped me gain a profound understanding of how to succeed. So I learned a lot from Sammy about leadership. Another friend calls you a mentor, friend, and chief noodler. As we all know, there are many Sammy-isms, like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Well, he's telling me that one a lot. Well, let's just noodle on that a while. But beyond his work family, there's other families. Ted Deere remembers Sammy in the early 1970s at the Mississippi School for Blind and realized very quickly that Sammy was the go-to person for the residents, their family, and the staff, often sacrificing things of his own comfort to make things better for others. And he went on to say, I have 4 sisters, and I was the only brother until Sammy came into our lives, and he is my brother. In fact, our family doesn't make any decisions without Sammy. I wasn't sure if there was a little bit of jealousy there, but I don't know, Ted, so I'm not going to say that. But he did say, if God said, who do you want to be your brother? He would have said, I've chosen Sammy. I think there's an author among us, probably many authors among us. Joan Bailey fondly calls you your dearest brother boy in her notes, having written that your thesis was in her office or kitchen table or somewhere, and really looks at your amazing career in philanthropy. Dick Malthus wrote that it's been a real honor to share decades of friendship and an honor going forward, and your extreme kindnesses will never be forgotten. You did a postscript on your letter, but I think you're the only one who probably needs to see that. Something about some nursing students from Amory or somewhere like that. And any rate, Lloyd Gray's already said a lot, but in his letter, he said your career legacy in philanthropy had already been well established far beyond the borders of the home state, but Mississippi had a need and you responded. So Sammy often has talked about melding as 2 sides of the same coin, philanthropy and nonprofits. And so the vision went to reality. You also had the vision to create Mississippi's LGBTQ Fund, your work and others in establishing, we've talked about community
You did a great job, Jane, where she's today about Dow, Mississippi and the credits, and the list goes on and on. What great role models and what seeds were being planted. From my perspective, well, we both got here on time today for lunch. When we first met, neither one of us were on time. It was in Baltimore at the Annie Casey Foundation. It was like, oh, I was so nervous. First time I'd been, it was when it was a whole lot of universities represented. I was like, oh, the last one in. Okay, I got a seat. Sat down, and anybody in the room. And then about 90 seconds later, or 2 minutes, there's somebody else who came in. And that person's named Sammy Moon, and everybody knew him in the room. And then when he realized I knew where Becker, Mississippi was, well, I knew we were going to be friends. And so that was, so I really want to thank you for being just a little later than I was at the Annie Casey Foundation's dinner in Baltimore many, many years ago. So we, it didn't take long. The Mississippi game conversation. Who do you know? Who do you know? We all know in Mississippi it's about 2.5 on a good day degrees of separation compared to 6 for the country. But at any rate, we began our conversations then. But who could have imagined that many years later we would be participating in a research seminar at the University of Zagreb, looking over the Adriatic Ocean, not a bad spot, where I shared my vision of creating a children's foundation. And Jeffrey's had a napkin right there. It wasn't a napkin, we actually had a piece of notebook paper, and we had our assignments. Sammy gave me an assignment. We came back the next day. We had it kind of mapped out. Kellogg Foundation had some planning grant, Lloyd Gray, Phil Hardin Foundation, and others have really shared in this vision. And Sammy, you are first board chair and have done an incredible job. I believe it was Willie Morris, but I'm not exactly sure. He described something about anyone has Mississippi roots, we always come back. We almost always come back. Sometimes it's in a pine box, but we may come back. But we're glad that you came back way before that time. And that your earlier plans to retire didn't really work out. And you've been getting us into good trouble, as John Lewis has said, and his whole life really was an example of that. Tom Waycaster, I think we say the words Tom Waycaster, we just sort of in awe, right? So Tom Waycaster, I believe, would agree as one of the visionaries of philanthropy in Mississippi and what it could be, both in the community and state level. Took me to Jonestown, Mississippi in Cahoga County. We spent a full day. He helped me understand the importance of sense of place in philanthropy. The works that have happened, and so many of you in this room, but we all give reference to Tom Waycaster. Sammy, you're in that league. Yes, you are. I have no idea who spoke at the dinner in Baltimore that night, but I knew I met a lifelong friend when Sammy came and we were sitting across the table. Who knew what was going to happen at that point? And the last slide, Dax and Pat Mazagal, Sammy's sons, who couldn't be here. But Sammy, and probably many of you know, stepped up in a less than optimal time in their lives and became their dad. His influence, support, and encouragement through the years has resulted in shaping a trajectory of these two young men that otherwise could have turned out very differently. When Sammy was recognized with the Mississippi Center for Justice's most prestigious award a few years back, his sons spilled the beans. For those of you who might know that occasionally Sammy likes, and I'm a little concerned about this, now you got more free time on your hand, likes to kind of contribute to the economy of the casinos. So, but anyway, in that one, the sons, Dax and Patton, said, and it was at this point there wasn't a dry eye in that room of probably about 500 people to say thank you for taking a chance on us. Many of us say that too, Sammy, for taking a chance on us. Jeffrey, JK, it's no wonder that Sammy has been the architect of many endeavors throughout his career, but we know you're a trained architect, and you've been an influence and support support for Sammy for more than 3 decades. We thank you for sharing Sammy with us. So the only other performing artist that was not in the ones that you gave me, which, and Elvis, how could I forget Elvis, was Liza Minnelli, and another one of your entertainers, and her iconic song, Maybe This Time. Well, and believe me, you don't want me to even try to begin to belt it out, but the lyrics are something like, maybe this time. Well, all the odds are they're in my favor. Something's bound to begin. It's going to happen sometime. Maybe this time I'll win. Sammy, you already have. You've won. And so have we by knowing you, by being mentored by you, and having you as a cherished friend and colleague. Our lives are enriched because of you, and so many others outside of here and in here are enriched because of you. But there are 2 very special guests who would now be time to come, and probably our youngest guests here, who have something to share with you today. So Kaylee and Brady, come on up. You can come right on the stage wherever you would like to share. Come. And I think they have maybe a couple words to share with everybody else knows it as Sammy, but this is Sound. So, Brayden and Kaylee, whoever would like to speak, or you don't have to speak. So, whatever your dad and your mom says.
Congratulations on retirement, Sam. How about a big hug for Sam?
Also noticed in the video there was a time that Sammy was doing a little hula hoop. So I thought that Brayden and Sam might give him some more lessons. So thank you. How about that? Okay, so hoops are one thing, but you also noticed in that video that Sammy really likes to go to Memphis, and when there are these other opportunities there, and how could we ever give you a rocking chair or a watch or a clock or anything like that, right? To watch the world go by, but really, because you are going to have more time, if you'll just be looking at me, okay, don't look around. Don't look around right now, please, although other people might be. I just would like for you to think about maybe some event planning and get some of these particular folks that you have loved so much to listen to their music, and we thought we would. So Dave, who is our current board chair, has a special presentation to you as well.
Sammy and Rotary is a 4-way test. The first one is it the truth? And second, is it fair to everyone involved? I'm not going to go into 3 and 4 because we don't qualify. But for the first 2, if I tell the truth about you, it may not be fair. So the real answer is, you're sitting at table 1. Our table in the back was 10, so we kind of debated what number should you be, and we decided you were a 10 in this group, so we're going to go ahead and give you a 10. Go from there. But also, sometimes you need a little help from your friends. We all do. We all do. And one in particular wanted to wish you happy retirement, which will last a few minutes, I'm sure. But I thought of a couple of songs, and I think the best one for you would be just Love Me Tender, and that's your buddy.
So do you want to start the roast now, or is that okay? Okay, and we're also presenting you a notebook of letters and other, this is a coffee table style book now, right? And others who didn't get a chance or have time, I'm sure Sammy would love to read them. So here you go, Sammy.
I even put it as much as this might pain me, but in a particular school color, so there you go.
Wasn't as bad as I thought. Yeah. Perfect. I promise I won't sing either. Is the video supposed to come next? And then I got a couple more things to say, but I am just going to be in a prominent place. You know, as we built this organization, Ellen, you and I worked together practically from the beginning to get it off the ground, to build it to what it is today, and to begin thinking about what the future can bring. I guess my question is, what do you hope that it can do in the future? And what are your aspirations for the Alliance going forward?
I mean, my hope for the Alliance going forward in the future, and especially in the next 12 to 18 months, is I want to see us deepen our work and engagement with funders. I'm excited about the possibilities that they can bring to us. I want to meet with them, talk to them, learn what they need in order to do better grant making. And I'm also excited about the possibilities around leadership development. Everywhere I go, I hear people say that they want more opportunities to connect. They want to have a circle of support. And so I think we're in the perfect position to offer that to not only existing leaders, but new up-and-coming leaders in the sector and the state. So I'm looking forward to having an opportunity to work around those issues.
It makes me realize that we've kind of come through various stages of development over the last 4 years. It's kind of the forming, storming, norming kind of scenario. This first 4 years has been about forming, you know, and all the planning and all of the stuff that to come together to create the Alliance as a new organization. And inevitably, as we all know, when you create a new organization, there's a storming period. And so we certainly have not been perfect. We have had some storming that we've gone through in the evolution of the organization. And it feels to me like we are kind of in the norming stage now. And that we've gotten some of those tough things done. And we do have the ability now not only to continue building a stable organizations, but to think about what else we could do. And those things that you just named seem to me to fit into that category of, you know, it's time to be norming a bit and looking to the future and what the future can bring.
I recently read an article that talked about that the nonprofit sector needs upbuilding and not rebuilding. Upbuilding is taking something and expanding on what it was, identifying new ways and new structures to make it better. I see the Alliance positioning itself to be a catalyst in the upbuilding of the nonprofit structure here in Mississippi, and that is what excites me.
I think that's right on, because that moves us into the realm of walking the walk and not just talking the talk.
Yeah.
Because if we're saying to funders and philanthropists, you need to be working differently with those on the ground doing the work. You need to be learning, sharing, building relationships, creating those win-wins. We need to be doing it ourselves.
Exactly.
And we've got the opportunity to do that. And that's, again, that gets back to what's fun. Is being out and listening to people and then designing work around what has been learned.
Exactly. What I love about working at the Alliance is that now I get to see the nonprofit sector, as I say, from a bird's eye view. I see it as a whole, and there's no way that we, as an individual organization, that we can have the impact on society that we want to have without working together.
I'm excited that you're coming into the role that I'm vacating.
I always think about what you say at the end of every staff meeting, and that's what we're gonna do. And you know what that is?
We're going to go forth and do good.
Go forth and do good.
a few notes here. But, you know, I look around the room and my gosh, not only is it just so celebratory to me to be with you folks that are doing the work on the ground and to be able to hopefully in some way been able to help in your success in doing that. Because not only do we have to do what we've been doing, but we got to do more in the future. So, you know, let's keep it going. You're going to have great leadership from the Alliance. It's going to keep it going both at the board and staff level and executive level. So, you know, you're in good shape. So that's one thing to say. Another is, I'm telling you, my godchild, Zachary Deere. Well, let me back up. Ted Deere, my brother, that you heard Linda talk about, he and his wife at the time produced the best person that could ever be produced to be a godchild, and I ended up with him. So Zachary Deere then turned around, and he and his wife produced the most beautiful, great godchildren. And Braden Deere and Kaylee Deere, y'all are just my heart. Sam. Love you big. So, I just remember coming back to Mississippi after being at the Casey Foundation for a number of years and realizing that, you know, my bestest and core set of friends are still here. And so I look at that table all around in John Bailey. I did write my thesis at your house. Had you not told me I could not be fed until I finished that thesis, I probably never would have done that. You know, we're just forever friends. And, you know, as you pointed out this morning, at one point I thought, well, maybe I should be a doctor. And my mom told me we couldn't afford the microscope. So Jenny sent me a text this morning saying, I'm glad your mom told you that you couldn't afford the microscope. Thank y'all. And Carol Berger, you know, my United Way, it was so much of what I learned and relationships that were built and, you know, the learnings of how to build collaborations that came from United Way, my years with United Way, and then to be able to, when I left, turn it over to Carol was just fabulous. And we know the history of your career there, and you're still going strong and as a role model for me in retirement. So, you know, when I came home and with the intent to have been retired from Casey, I was home for just a little bit when I got a call from Marcy Skelton, who was on the board with Rebecca Combs Delaney and Marcy and Jane Alexander of the Mississippi Association of Grant Makers. And the call came in and said, well, now we know you're back home and you're not doing anything. Why don't you do a little volunteer work with the Mississippi Association of Grant Makers? And that's really how the whole thing started. Was, you know, I said, okay, we'll do that. And so spent some time, made a presentation. And then the question that was put on the table is there any future for this organization? Is there any future for the Mississippi Association of Grant Makers? And, you know, my charge was to try to help figure that out. And so we went through a process and came up with, yeah, it's not only, you know, hope for the future. If you really want to do it and you really want to invest in it, here's what it's going to take. But I think you can. And, you know, Rebecca, I think you at that time were the one that made the initial contact with the Kellogg Foundation that said, we want to try to see if we can do something here. So, you know, it's just been this incredible array of people and opportunity that has led us to today, both to my retirement and to the Alliance being 4 years old and with a very bright future, I think, ahead of it. You know, the Alliance board and the people that were on the center board in the Alliance at that time include Carol Penick, who was chair of the MAG board, and Liz Brister, who was chair of the center board. And both of them, you know, said, interesting idea. Let's think about whether some kind of merger could occur. Joe Donovan is the one that kept pushing on me to say, how can we work closer together? And long story short, one day, somebody up there did say I was wordy. Joe Donovan said to me one day, he said, we got to figure out some way how the Alliance and the Center can work closer together. And our charge to each other was, okay, by this weekend, we were having lunch at Manship that Friday. And the challenge was, over the weekend, we're going to figure this out. Came back the next week, and I said to him, well, I have been crazy over the weekend, and I think we should not just figure out how to work closer. We need to become one, And that was kind of the birth of the idea of the formation of Alliance. Before that week was over, a concept paper had been developed, and the approach to Kellogg had happened, and we were fairly sure at that point the planning grant might be coming, and so that's how things started. So other chairs of the board through that process were Tom Pittman, Wendy Mullins, Mike Claiborne, and Aisha Nindor. And so that's the leadership group from the two organizations that got us through the formation. And so my thanks go to all of them. Also I just mentioned Joe Donovan, and he was at that time in the interim spot as a consultant to the center. But then my friend Sherry Rainey came in, Joe left, and Sherry came in, and we just immediately not only connected, and I think of you as a wonderful friend, but we worked our what's off, trying to figure out what is this that we have committed to doing here. And then, of course, Sherry gets this big promotion and goes away to the corporate world. And Joe G. Pritchard comes in. Joe G. having forever been involved with the Center for Nonprofits. And Joe G., without missing a beat, picked up, and off we went and continued. And Joe G., your leadership over history of the volunteer and nonprofit sector is just remarkable. And, it's been an amazing journey. It's been an amazing journey. And, I remember one time my mom said to me that this is when I was getting ready to go off to college. And I kept saying, I want to do something that helps people or works with people. And she kept saying, no, you need to be like your cousins, Hal and Jimmy. They've gone into business and got a business degree, and they're really making some money. And I thought at one point, maybe she's right. And certainly if the intent had been to make money, she would have been right. But I decided, no, that's not me. That's not who I am. That's not what my calling is. And so, social work, sociology, applied sociology, and so forth became a passion, and that has translated into a remarkable 48-year career. So it is kind of a bittersweet time for me. It's sweet in that I will be able to do more, and I know that you all are. I mean, you can invite me out to lunch and dinner, and that's a travel companion. It's wonderfully sweet in that way. It's also a little hard to think that I won't be going into work, although I'm still going to be doing a little bit of stuff, and will always stay involved because I can't just sit back and watch Oprah and eat bonbons. Although I could eat bonbons. I thank all of you, all of that to wrap up and say I thank all of you, my dear, dear friends, my wonderful Ted and Brayden and Kaylee and Zach Dieter, just remarkable. I'm so fortunate. We're also so fortunate to have Ellen Collins coming on as my successor. I've worked with Ellen, as the little video said, I think, from very early in the beginning of the organization. So there's nobody that understands what has been done, what there is still to do, how to get it done, the inner workings of the organization and the outer workings of the relationship. I cannot, in fact, I don't know that I would have left if I didn't feel fully comfortable, because I want to know that it's going to go beyond anything that's been dreamed so far. And Ellen, with you taking that and with the people you have to work with and the support that you have, it will go beyond what any of that's gonna be a fun ride. So buckle up, Buttercup. So let me introduce you to the new executive director of the Alliance of Nonprofits, Ellen Collins. Remember my name tag. I love that. Elvis is in the background.
You would have me standing here with Elvis. I just want to say thank you to Sammy, for those warm words of encouragement and well wishes, and it's been a journey. Sammy and I, we started working in 2019, but we met well before that, and it's funny how I came to be at the Alliance. I was at a Christmas luncheon with held by Marcy Skelton, and he was talking about the Alliance, and I was just kind of listening. I was like, interesting concept. I think I could do that. And I actually followed back up with Sammy, and at the time I was working with Midtown Partners, with Christy Hendricks. And so I inquired with Sammy about, the opportunity and what they were growing and so forth. And then one day I was walking out of the Midtown Partners office, and Marcy Skelton pulled up, and she pulled up on the street, and she yelled out of her car, "Ellen, Sammy Moon was asking me about you." And I'm like, my boss is right there. And I'm like, okay. So that's how thus began our journey together. And it's been kind of like that ever since, right? But first I want to just publicly thank the Alliance Board of Directors for the confidence that they have in me to continue to carry on the work began by Sammy and the founding directors back in 2019. And I say here we are today, celebrating and going into our 5th year of operation. Much has happened over the last few years. We've gone from a newly formed startup to what I describe as our adolescence growth stage. And as most of you, or many of you know, it's during this time that you can see an organization whether it's going to grow or fail. And I can say today that we are growing, and we're discovering each day that the vision Sammy and the others had to reimagine the relationship between nonprofits and philanthropy was the right thing to do. So Sammy, I stand here today to say thank you. Thank you for believing in yourself, first of all, believing in us, your staff, and in believing that all of us working together in innovative ways, that we can transform our communities and ultimately our state to become the place where we all can thrive. And I want to ask you to come up to the stage again. You gotta come up. One more time. Sammy, this is a gift from all of us, the staff. It's just a small token of our appreciation for all that you've done and you've led us through. And it's been a lot over these last 4 years, And we just want to thank you and just say well wishes. We know you're not gone, and we know you want to peek. You can pull some of it. You can pull it out. It's good stuff. We got your colors.
Oh, good. Okay, so it's kind of amalgamation.
Yeah, it is.
All right, I'll wait.
So, but that's our gift from the team. I don't know where they are. They're kind of scattered here. But thank you for everything. And you are not far away, and you'll be doing 8 to 12 hours a week.
Thank you.
And before I move on, I do want to recognize another special guest that we have in the room today. Allison Higgins. Will you just please raise your hand and stand? Allison is with the National Council of Nonprofits, and she's Director of Network Engagement.
As you know, as the Mississippi Alliance, we're a state association, and so the National Council is I would call our mothership of state association. They're our national membership association, to which we are a membership of, and where we get some of our benefits that we can provide to you on a discounted rate. So Allison has been saying now for about 2 years that she wanted to join us, and so the opportunity came for her to drive over from Alabama to join us today. So we thank you for coming, and we're looking forward to continue relationship with you. Thank you. And before I move on to my final closing remarks, final exam, I would like to recognize another person in the audience today. And this is a good friend of mine. And I probably will get emotional. I am. This person was my boss in Chicago. I went to Chicago in, I think it was 2005. And before I left, I actually ended up at the McCormick Tribune Foundation. She opened the door for me to come into philanthropy. And she has been in my life for 22 years. 22 years of friendship, of mentoring, and just being there for me and encouraging me along the way. And I'm just so happy at that time in my life that our paths crossed. And I'm so happy that you're here with me in Mississippi now. And I just want her to stand up if she will. And this is Dr. Wanda Newell. And Wanda also connected to me. So I just feel so blessed to have you in my life, and just thank you for being here today. Okay. So now we'll move on to our final remarks, and just to say thank you to our speakers today, Jim and Jean, for talking to us and bringing us a wonderful conversation around the cent to 55%. We're so grateful to have you today, and we're looking forward in our continued relationship and how the Alliance can play a role in helping to move that role. Thank you to the Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame and Museum for hosting us today. And also a special thanks again to Sandra Johnson, our executive coordinator. Sandra took on the task to plan this day, and it was kind of, as Sammy said, herding cats with us, so that it could be a great event. And thanks to the entire Alliance team for all their work in helping to ensure that the day went off without a hitch. And we want to say thank you to our members, because without you, we would not exist. And if you are not a member of the Alliance, I just don't know who that would be, but I would encourage you to join. And if you have any questions about our membership, our staff, they're all around, they're available to answer any questions. Our next quarterly member meeting will be on July 14th, and details will be sent out, and so we'll look forward to seeing you there. And we usually do that probably within the next month or so, but you will see that. Now, for those of you who cannot stay with us for the remainder of the afternoon, but if not, we wish you that you have safe travels. But starting at 2 o'clock, you all are invited to join us for an honorary retirement reception for Sammy Moon in the mezzanine. And you will have staff to direct you there. And so we're just going to continue to party on the mezzanine. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. If you're not staying